So we talked last month that the early stage of the disease, we like to call normalization. That's what we focus on, is normalization in the earliest stages of the disease. Trying to keep things as normal as possible and coming alongside our loved ones and our residents, patients, and clients, and making things as normal as they can be, keeping that dignity and keeping that independence. The middle stage of the disease is what we call a supportive stage of the disease. They're now needing help with probably everything. They're having some changes in their communication. They're having changes in the way that they walk, in the way that they eat, toileting. Everything is changing. And so this stage is called that supportive stage. So what we're calling it is supportive and stimulating. And this is where, as caregivers, family caregivers and professionals, we have to accept and start to really adapt a new reality that this disease is progressing. So what we want to do is we want to focus on what's left. We want to focus on the skills that still remain and maximize those skills and then match up the abilities that they have left. I found this scan yesterday and I wanted to share it because I thought it was really interesting, because it is a scan of some of the changes that are taking place in the brain of somebody who has dementia. And again, I'm just going to use the umbrella term dementia as we're walking through these activities. The one on the left, that's earlier in the disease, but the one in the middle is the mid stage. And look at the difference between early to mid stage of the disease, and then the drastic difference that you see between mid to late stage in the disease. So when we can look at a scan like this, I think it helps us understand why they change. When we consider that our loved one is going from a 3-pound normal healthy brain like all of us have, down to, in that late stage, a 1-pound brain. So probably right here in the middle, it's probably about 2 pounds. That's a lot to lose. And you can see in those areas, communication is right back here, that the way they communicate and the way they understand becomes more difficult. So that can be challenging whenever we are trying to do things with them or come up with activities for them to do. Now, during the middle stages, they're going to use more actions and behaviors. We really don't like using the word behaviors. We like using more expressions. They're going to be using their expressions to communicate. And sometimes it may be using words that we don't like, or using words that are even inappropriate, because those words remain. Those curse words, sex talk, and racial slurs that are stored on the right may start to come out more and more in these middle stages. They're still trying to make their needs known. And this is where we have more challenging behaviors than any of the other stages of the disease, because they're getting frustrated because we don't understand what they're trying to say. I spoke with a family member yesterday who said that her husband will get so frustrated when he's trying to tell her something and she's not understanding him, that he starts expressing that he just wants to die, that he just wants to kill himself, that he just wants everything to be over. Now, he doesn't have that suicidal ideation to where he has a plan, but you can imagine the frustration. I'm trying to get you to understand me. It would be like if we were in a foreign country and people were only speaking to us in a language we didn't understand, and they weren't using any cues to help us. We'd get very frustrated. We see more anxiety and depression during this stage with our loved ones, with our clients, our patients, and our residents. Another thing they really lose in the middle stage is that impulse control. That's controlled by what we sometimes call the filter, that filter that we all have that says, don't say that, don't do that, or I better say that, or I should do that. And they lose that filter. So they will say and do things that they never would have done before in this middle stage. Coming out of the bathroom with no clothes on at all and walking down the hallway. and not feeling anything about that necessarily. Another thing that is really impaired is sequencing. So sequencing, and think about how many steps there are to everything that we do all day long. Just today, how many things have you done that had multiple steps? Brushing your teeth, eating breakfast, getting out of the bed, putting your clothes on, putting on some makeup, shaving, shower, getting in and out of the car. And that's where sometimes you'll come up and you'll see just this look. They may even have a furrowed brow. They're telling us, I don't know what to do. There's too many steps, and I don't know where to start. And they may be unable to complete familiar tasks without some guidance. What we want to focus on, though, is that they can still complete the task. We just now have to come alongside them. Maybe instead of having everything out on the vanity in the bathroom, we are in there with them and we hand them the toothbrush with the toothpaste already on it. And then we make the symbol like this. We make a sign. And then they'll start because they can still do it. And we don't want to take that away from them, because if we do go in and try to take away too much too soon, we can trigger a challenging expression or a challenging behavior. Some other things that are common to the middle stages of the disease are greater lapses in memory, because we are moving right through this progressive disease. So you may find them starting to have a hard time contributing to a conversation. And they may even do something like confabulate. Now, confabulate's a nice fancy word that we use in healthcare for making up a story or telling a lie. And families will say, my dad's lying, my mom's lying, my husband's lying. And I tell them they don't have the capacity to lie. They have dementia. They don't have the capacity to lie, just like they don't have the capacity to steal. They shop. They don't steal. And they confabulate to still be able to be part of the conversation. Because imagine again, empathy, put yourself in their shoes. Everybody's talking, everyone's having this conversation and they're not including me, and I'm confused anyway. There's too much going on, so I'll just make something up. And it might be grandiose depending on what type of disease they have. You can get some interesting stories. But becoming disoriented to time and place, very, very common. And this is where also a regular clock will probably not mean anything anymore, because 3 o'clock, 11:30 doesn't mean anything. So when our loved one gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and starts getting ready to go to work, and we say it's 4 o'clock, go back to bed, 4 o'clock doesn't mean anything. But if we open the blinds and look outside and say it's dark, that means something. We learned night and day and dark and light before we learned 4 o'clock. And remember that theory of retrogenesis that we talk a lot about on our programs. They're going back to who they originally were. And we weren't originally telling time, walking, feeding ourselves, toileting ourselves. That's where we're headed. But in this middle stage, we can still understand light and dark, nighttime, daytime. They may really be paranoid during the middle stage also. You may see them more and think about why that is. They're not understanding. And so you're stealing my things. You're taking my stuff. You're poisoning me. All 5 senses change as well. In most people with dementia, when the taste changes, sweet is what stays. That's why we say ice cream becomes our best friend. The sweeter, the better. Or if we can start to make them shakes, milkshakes, but maybe we're making it with some Ensure, or we're putting some protein powder in it so that we can get some extra calories in them. This is the one disease that it is okay to have a little bit of extra weight in the beginning and the middle, because there's going to come a time this brain is failing, it's dying, that it's not going to know what to do with that food anymore, and they're going to start losing weight. No matter what we do, they're going to start losing weight. Another thing that happens in the middle stages is lack of self-awareness. So they may stand too close. They may get in people's personal space. But let's look at some of those retained abilities that most people have in the middle stages. Now, if you hear something and you go, nope, my loved one isn't doing that, then they may be kind of on that cusp of middle to late, because they can be well into the middle stages and be starting to do some of the late stages. They will probably still have some pretty good fine motor skills and be able to do some large type puzzle pieces like you see in the picture. That gentleman is doing something there on the left that's called, basically that's an adult busy box, and he's doing locks and switches, but he's working, he's staying busy. He has a purpose, he has a reason. In the middle stages, they'll be able to follow a one-step direction or a one-step command. We've just got to make sure we say it properly. Don't put too many adjectives in there. They can most definitely mirror, like I said earlier. A lot of people, when their loved one's still at home, they'll make sure that they start to eat directly across from them so that when they pick up the fork, their loved one will mirror them and pick up the fork, because the fork is going to go away eventually. We haven't always been using the fork. They're going to put down the knife first, then they'll put down the fork. We'll use the spoon for a long time, and then we'll go to finger foods. And that's okay. We can use the finger foods for a very, very long time before they need assistance with mealtime. We also have to remember, and we're going to talk about this on the next slide, that their vision is changing. Teepa Snow, if you've ever followed Teepa Snow, she says that early in the disease, it's like they have blinders on. Mid-stage is binoculars. So they're seeing what's right here, field of vision. They will probably still be able to sit and stand on their own and walk. However, they may start to use a walker or a cane during this stage. Their long-term memory can still be accessed. We've just got to know how to ask those questions. Social chit-chat should still be there with a tone that we can still follow. It's not just that flat affect. And they will do really well with a daily routine, just like they did earlier in the disease. So during this stage, it's very appropriate for them to be able to do things where they are needed. They still need to be needed. We all have that need. Let me help you. And one of the worst things that we can do is say to somebody with dementia, I've got it. Go ahead in there and sit down and just watch your show. And boy, aren't we guilty of doing that sometimes. We really talk about that. We'll be doing a program closer to the holidays called, I used to call it Fewer Holiday Hassles, but it's Holidays with Dementia. But allow them to sort, and especially if they can sort some of their own things. If a man had a toolbox or a shop, go out there and get rid of the things that they could really get hurt on, but let them sort nuts and bolts and tools. A woman might have a sewing kit, or if she made jewelry, and they're not going to be doing it in the same way that they were in the earlier stages, but let them still keep their hands on their stuff. That's important. Again, I've got those binoculars there to keep in mind that in the mid stages of the disease, that sight is going to change. Now, at the end of the disease, it's more like that monocle, but right now in the middle, it's like binoculars. They're going to be needing more hands-on care during this time. They will probably still be able to read during this time. Now, one thing that's interesting, though, is that a person with dementia will be able to read longer than they'll be able to comprehend. So if you have notes, or if you've labeled drawers because you want them to still be able to put away the clothes or put away the dishes, and this says forks, dishes, towels, whatever it is, they're going to be able to speak those words and read the words longer than they're going to comprehend what is a fork or what is a towel. So just watch out for that. Because sometimes we'll get to thinking because they can read the word, they understand what the word is, and they don't. This is where we really have to slow down. We can't speak the same way that we've always been able to speak to them. One thing that we can also do is start to use their first name. They may not respond anymore to mom or dad. They may not respond to a nickname that we had for them, and we may find ourselves having to use their first name. Using visual gestures and cues, and again, they will still mirror your actions during this time. Another thing you can typically still do during the middle stages of the disease is ask yes or no questions, but no open-ended questions. Now, we're going to use open-ended questions when we talk about an activity on reminiscence in just a little bit, but that's going to be a little bit different. But not saying to somebody in the middle stages of disease, what have you been doing today? Or if they were at a day program, what did you do all day long? I don't know what I did all day long. Or what did you have for lunch? I didn't even have lunch. But to use those yes and no, or to get it down to two choices. Do you want the red or the blue? Would you like a hamburger or a hot dog? So that they're still making a decision for themselves. Another thing that we want to focus on as the professionals and as the family caregivers is, can we tap into what's the feeling and emotion and the need that they're trying to express? Because maybe they've just got that furrowed brow and they're saying some really bad words, but they're holding their stomach because they don't have the words to say, help me, my stomach hurts. And you might even say that yes, no question, does your stomach hurt? And they say, no, no. But I'm holding my stomach, I'm rocking, and I have a furrowed brow. Because you'll start to hear a lot more no's than yeses. You might also repeat back to them what they are saying for clarification, or what you're thinking that you understand. And we want to continue to nurture your relationship during this time so that you don't start getting to the point where you feel like your entire identity is that of caregiver. So activities for a person in the middle stages of the disease, we break those down into 4 categories. And we want to make sure and touch on mental, physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and occupational domains of wellness. So we're going to break these activities up into purposeful and productive activities so that they continue to have a sense of value and purpose. That's important for everybody, to make sure I still feel needed. Don't you still need me? Don't you still want me? Don't I still have purpose in your life? We want to make sure and have some fun and leisure activities. Now, if you think about it, this is for all of us. This isn't just people with dementia. This is for all of us. We need those fun and leisure activities also, where we're just having fun and interacting with other people. Self-care, so that they can take care of their own body and even their own brain. And we'll look at some things that they can do to stimulate them. And then we all need those restful and restorative activities where we re-energize and where we also restore our spirit. So we're going to look at each of those areas so that we ourselves and our loved one can live a healthy and balanced life. These are a few activity suggestions that we're going to just start with, because I want you to think about what we said about those meaningful interactions. Imagine a life without meaningful interactions. That's a life that's lacking in opportunities for personal fulfillment. While the capabilities of people with dementia may decline, the potential for personal fulfillment does not decline. And it's important for them to still be able to engage in meaningful activities. Many people with dementia will start to suffer from boredom. And when they become bored and when they become restless is when we get those challenging behaviors. Most of the suggested activities that we're going to talk about are going to have a potential to restore a sense of normalcy lacking from the daily lives of dementia patients, while preventing loneliness, despair, and thoughts of wanting to die. Meaningful activities offer a number of other functions as well, including giving people with dementia control over their environments, calming anxiety, and reducing wandering and other troublesome behaviors. I mentioned earlier about sorting and rummaging. That can be, if we look at it as a challenging behavior, that could be a challenging behavior, but we can turn it into a positive activity. I've actually known families who've created a rummage room, an entire room where everything in there they are free to go through, and they fill it with stuff. Every drawer has stuff they can get in. The closet has stuff they can get in, and they can just rummage and look at things. There's also something called a memory box. And we actually have an entire program called DIY memory boxes, make your own memory boxes. We also have some memory boxes. If you live in the Fort Worth area, there are memory boxes at the Fort Worth libraries that we've created that you can check out at the library. And you create, it's about the size of a shoebox, and you create a box that has a theme. Some of the ones we put on here are jewelry, tools, sports, cooking. And so you can have all of these shoe boxes, these plastic shoe boxes that have things in them related to a particular theme. And you want to talk about rummage and be able to tell some stories. So they're great ideas. You can find ideas online. And again, we've got our program that's up about do-it-yourself memory boxes. Somebody who can still use scissors and use scissors safely, one of the things you might have them do is just cut things out of a newspaper or cut things out of a magazine, make their own books or scrapbooks. I used to be the director of the day program here at the West Center, and I would go to Half Price Books. Half Price Books has a fantastic clearance area. All of them do. And I would buy the big, nice coffee table books for $1, $2. I never spent more than $3. And I'd take them to the day program, and I would have people cut pictures out, tear pictures out, and they would tell me stories. I had a gentleman in the middle stages of the disease. He'd been a pilot. So I would look for books with airplanes, and he would tear and cut those out and then paste them onto paper and make all of these books about airplanes. And he loved when students or other people would come up and ask him questions about airplanes because he could tell stories about planes. Now, he would tell you that he was in every single picture, but that's okay. Because we would say to him, tell me more about that one. Because there's going to come a time he can't tell those stories anymore, but I'm going to tell them back to him because I took the time to do that with him. Music is a huge part of activities with somebody with dementia. It's one of those 4 ways that we use for distraction. Their music, food, music, animals, and children are our 4 things that we can really use to distract. And music with some of these other ideas is fantastic, especially if you tap into their music set. We all have a music list that we develop between the ages of 10 and 25. 10 and 25 tends to be our music list if you study music therapy. So if you can go back and find or figure out what music that they really enjoyed during that time. A person who has always been active in church and knows the Bible will still enjoy looking at and reading the Bible, listening to hymns, listening to holiday songs. It's almost that time. If you go in the stores, it looks like it's that time. But those are things we learned when we were very young. And so they will keep those songs from church, holiday songs, hand massages, compassionate touch, and then reminiscing. And we're going to look at some reminiscing questions. They actually make books. I did a book with my grandfather called A Grandfather Remembers, and it basically is a book of reminiscing. And I went and I interviewed him. It was wonderful. And I took my daughter with me. She was a teenager, and she got to hear all of his stories. We spent a 4-day weekend with him over Thanksgiving one year, and I put all those stories together in a book and was able to share those with the rest of our family. Because in the middle stages, they generally can still tap into those long-term memories. Tell me about your favorite holiday. Really listen. And now we've got these handy dandy phones. We could record them telling the story. There's going to come a time they can't tell us those stories anymore. We've got to grab them. I've just watched too many families not do this kind of stuff with their loved ones, and then they get to the point that they can't, and they realize those stories are lost forever. And it's heartbreaking. One of my favorite ones that I use with especially the men in our day program. Tell me about your first car. And if you happen to have a coffee table book of old cars, we can be looking through that book together, because those are adult books. They don't look like books. Those are adult books. Or if they were into horses, or if they had a farm or tractors or whatever it was, you can find coffee table books on it. Barnes and Noble has a lot of really good coffee table books as well. So this is a list of reminiscing questions. And then I'm going to give you a website at the end of this where you can go and actually buy something called Reminiscing Cards. And it will have pictures. We talked about it in the early stage. They're still very appropriate in the mid stage, but it's cards that have pictures of common things from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And they're great to use to reminisce. So here are some of the purposeful and productive activities. This particular list actually came from Teepa Snow. And this is being able to kind of tap into that mental, physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and occupational side. Again, with the sorting, having, we used to take a group down to a clothes closet at one of the local churches where people would donate clothes, and it's just sorting. And they were still very capable of sorting. They, in fact, many of them could still read the tag and put it even into small, medium, large, extra large, just depending on their skills. And then you're giving back. You're volunteering. You're doing something for somebody else. Cleaning. A lot of people will like to clean, especially if that was something that they've always done, is clean. Folding, moving things around, cooking and baking if they're still able to do that, reading through a recipe, setting something up and breaking down, especially if we need their help. Could you help me set the table? It doesn't matter if they don't do it like you want it done. Give them the option of doing it. Holidays are coming. These are some things to keep in mind with that as well. Being able to help another person, especially if it's a child, if they could sit with a child and let that child read to them, or do their homework and they're sitting beside a child and they're helping them, then they're needed. Allow them to still do things like unload the dishwasher or fold the clothes. You may have to go find where they put them, where they put everything, but it's okay. They need to be needed. Usually in the middle stages, they can still work in a garden. They can still dig, especially if it's a raised garden bed, they can still do things outside. Now, here's some things that are listed as fun and leisure activities. And again, this comes from Teepa Snow. And this is, notice that at the very first one there says social, staying social. Because so many times as our loved one starts to progress through this disease, we start becoming more and more withdrawn and we're never leaving the house. That isn't good for us, and it's not good for our loved one. And this is where day programs are great, where they go for the day. You get a break, you get some respite, but they go somewhere for the day. Now, here's what I've heard so many times from families. Nope, you don't know my dad. He is not going to be interested in that. There's no way in the world. And then I'm getting pictures of things like you see right here. Yeah, they did, because everybody else was playing the game and we were having fun and we were laughing, and there they are playing the game too. My favorite is when people tell me that their loved one won't dance or won't sing, and then I'm sending them pictures and videos later of them dancing and singing with other people. At this point in the disease, usually middle stage of the disease, we do need to start getting the large piece. They've got giant Jenga, they've got giant Connect 4. They make giant cards at Dollar Tree. They've got cards that are like 5x7 cards. They've also got giant dominoes, giant checkers. You can find so many different games that are big, because they're going to start losing their fine motor skills, but they can still pick those type of things up right now. Another thing that people in the middle stages still many times like to do is watch entertainment or go to a program. Something like a movie might be too long. You can try it, just have a plan B. Even going to church but have a plan B, or maybe we're going to sit at the back so we can leave if we need to, but still being able to go out to social events. Watching a sports program, that's something that many people in the middle stages still like to do, or playing some type of a sport. This next set, you'll notice this is more on self-care and wellness activities. And I found a picture of a lady there playing with the Wii. The Wii is fantastic. So many people with dementia can do the Wii because there's bowling, there's boxing, there's many different types of things that you have to be up. There's balancing and using the Wii. And they'll be able to do that for a long time. Now, there will come a time that they won't. And you may then start doing the controller for them and playing some different types of games, but for a while, they'll be able to do it. There's tabletop type tasks, there's tabletop games, and there's group games that you can play. Now, you may think you're going to get those cards down, and they've always loved to play cards, and this time they just want to match them. I did this with somebody in our day program. I bought the big cards and I thought, here we go, he's going to love it. And he wanted to match it. We were still playing a game. It just wasn't the game I had planned on playing. It's the game he wanted to play. And that's what was important. We did it for a long time. He would put the cards out and even shuffle them around. But he was very busy and intent. He had a plan. He'd match the red and the red and the black and the black, and sometimes he'd match the numbers, and we were having a conversation while we were playing. Still being able to do range of motion activities. You may have heard us say a person with dementia is going to go in and out of physical therapy throughout the course of the disease. Not only physical therapy, but occupational therapy and speech therapy as well. Doctor can write that, and they're going to go in and out of the therapies because therapy knows how to tap into muscle memory. A good therapist knows how to tap into muscle memory and not write non-compliant and go to their next client. Make sure and ask those questions also. They have staff that's trained in memory care. Let's look at the next set. This is the restful restorative activities. And this is where we may not be able to attend our church service any longer, but just about every church now has their church services recorded, or you can go to their website and you can pull up a church service at any time. Here in Fort Worth, we actually have Dementia Friendly Fort Worth that does a Dementia Friendly chapel service every week. And instead of having a sermon, they just do familiar hymns and they read scripture. So it's much shorter. And anybody can watch that because it's online. Having an animal, and if you don't have a real animal, I'm going to give you a website where you can purchase robotic animals that are made specifically for people with dementia. They have cats and dogs, and boy, do they look real and sound real. They even breathe. Being outside. There's something to just being outside, especially this time of year where we are in Texas. We have our very short period of time where it isn't too hot and it isn't too cold. And have we been taking advantage of just being outside in the mornings and in the evenings? We are the ones who think that we need to fill the time with something, and they must be bored just sitting there in the sun, or they must be bored just sitting there doing. You can look at a person's face and tell, because remember what we said earlier, time doesn't mean the same thing. And they may be perfectly content to sit out on the patio or to sit out near the garden for a long period of time, and they're fine. We are the ones who get uncomfortable with very long periods of silence, or without looking at that phone, or without having the TV on in the background. But they tend to do all right. Rocking in a chair, many times rocking actually is self-soothing. Sitting on a porch swing outside, listening to someone read to them, or listening to a book on tape. Now, this is something called restorative care. And this is where they're actually able to help and assist with their own personal care. And we have written out here what restorative care is. Maximize a person's level of function and minimize decline, allowing people to participate as much as possible in their daily activities. And that's including bathing, dressing, and going to the bathroom. Again, we don't want to go in and take over. Yes, they're going to need help, and they're going to need more help at this stage, but allowing them to do as much as possible, as long as possible, and remembering dignity. Dignity. None of us would want to be just sitting on a shower chair completely naked and somebody's just bathing us. And if it's our child that's doing it or someone that I don't know, we have more challenging behaviors during ADL time, that's activities of daily living time, than any other time. And think about why that is. How long have we been toileting ourselves since we were 2-3 years old? Or showering or bathing or brushing our own teeth. And then someone comes in and tries to do that for me or tells me I'm doing it wrong. And we get a challenging behavior out of that. This is some supportive activities. And again, some of these repeat, but the point of this with the supportive activities is to have success while helping. Success while helping. So putting together some flower arrangements. Most everybody in the middle stages can do that. Pulling weeds out of a garden. And again, raised garden beds are really good because then they're not having to try to get up and down off of their knees. Those group activities, still attending choir, still attending a Sunday school. Taking rides, going out and sightseeing. Most people in the middle stages can still do even a day trip. Some will be able to do a weekend trip and do okay, but always, again, have that plan B just in case. Helping prepare a snack. They may not be able to do the sequencing of the recipe, but if they read it and you make sure that we're doing one step at a time, they're still going to be able to participate and help. And then a supportive environment, the type of things that we can do. I put a picture on here on the right of a visual cue. It's actually a little pad that you can buy. And so if your loved one happens to have aphasia, if they happen to be getting to the point that they can't say the words anymore, and you can see they're getting really frustrated, you can buy one of these mats, and there's all different types of mats. They come in different languages that you can even get some that have a picture of water, a picture of the bathroom, a picture of a snack, a picture of, and they can point to the picture. And I'm going to give you a website to where to find those in just a minute. In the middle stages, we are going to have some safety features in place. Think about how we learned to walk. We had a lot of falls, didn't we? 2- and 3-year-olds fall down all the time. And as a person with dementia stops walking, we're going to have a lot of falls. And that's everybody's biggest fear, is them breaking a hip, having to have anesthesia, the worst thing that we can have happen to somebody with dementia, general anesthesia. It progresses the disease. I know what I need to add on here. They make something that's called a hip saver, hip savers. You can buy them online. They go on over their brief or over their underwear, and they've got a pad right there at the ball joint. And most people in the middle stages, this is when they're going to start using those hip savers. So if they do fall or if they stumble, that catches it. And you can Google hip saver protective device or protective briefs. But if you put in hip saver, it'll come up. Put in hip saver. Music therapy is also on here again. And this is doing music. And one of the best is drums. We've got a program called, I believe it's Drum Fit. And it's drums, tambourines, maracas. Those are a lot of fun. And if you've got grandkids, That's lots of fun to do with grandkids. Now, on this page, I've got two resources. One is called allsstore.com, and the other one is called ssww.com, and it's for a place called SNS Worldwide. And that is where I go when I am looking for things that are made specifically for people with dementia. Now, if you go to this ssww.com, up in their search, you're going to want to type in dementia, and it is going to pull up tons of things that they have specifically for dementia. If you look in this upper right-hand corner, I went in there and I just got, they sell a kit that comes with the large playing cards, sensory type items. You see there it has flowers, but you can sew around the flowers so it does not look childlike. The pictures are not cartoons or anything. They've got many, many, many items on SNS Worldwide. Now, what I always do though, just a little tip, I go in there and find it, and then I go over to Amazon, and it's usually cheaper. But I find the item on AllStore. The one on the lower right hand, that is a set of DVDs, and it's a reminiscence set of DVDs. So instead of holding the cards, having picture cards to talk about, they're on the TV. You play a DVD and it puts up pictures of the things from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And you can even just buy a particular set. You can buy a set of entertainers, ball players, places, news items, things like that. The radio that I have there, look, it says the word radio on the front, and it only has one button, off and on, off and on. So you set the station. There's another place where you can set the station, but it's easy to use, and they can still turn their own radio off and on. The phone that is there, this is for people who do still have a landline and can still use a phone. I just had somebody get one of these for their loved one not very long ago. And this, they just push the picture of the person that they want to call. That was on the AllStore. AllStore has that. And then again, you can go over to Amazon, sometimes find it cheaper. And then the clock that is right there gives the day, and look, it even says morning. It'll say if it's morning or afternoon, evening, night. Christmas is coming. These are some good ideas. And both of these places have some great things. And it says 10:15 a.m. and then the date. And those are great for a lot, especially if you've got someone who repeats over and over and over, what day is it? What day is it? What day is it? What time is it? What time is it? And they've got their clock. Just some ideas. There's some information on the West Center. There's my email. Jamie's email is on there. More information about us. We're a long-term care, 100-bed long-term care, and we only have residents who have dementia. So that is our specialty. We also do have a day program that is open. We are going to be moving locations soon, but we do have our open day program here at the West Center. And then we have our education department. And I know we're a few minutes early, but does anybody have any questions, anything you want to add, or anything that you may have even done for somebody in those middle stages? And while I'm thinking about it, let me just add, for those of you that came on late, you'll be getting a email later today from Jamie with all of these slides, a link to the recording, and the CEU information if you're needing CEs, if you're a nurse, social worker, or licensed professional counselor. You can unmute, or you can type in the chat if you have anything you'd like to add, or if you know of other resources. I always love hearing about other resources. All right, y'all know where to find us. We are always here. We'll always get back with you. You can shoot us an email. You can call us, and please do that. I appreciate you being here today, and please be looking for the email later this afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, have you had any experience with the Fit Minds program?
I have not.
I really like using that. It's based out of Florida, and it's 2 lesson plans a week, and it in 2 different levels, higher functioning and lower functioning, but it covers the visual, spatial, math, all the cognitive. And I really enjoy that. I would suggest looking into that for someone.
Sure will, sure will. Now here at the West Center, we use the IN2L, the It's Never
Yes.
Too Late program. We do
Mhm.
that, but I'm gonna look at this. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, everybody. See y'all later.
Bye.